Hey, good evening, everybody. It has been a busy day, Wednesday. I'm not sure I actually made it over the hump today. I'm still kind of struggling to get up there. Uh, it's been a Wednesday is the day that I put out the national newsletter for Waterway Guide. And that starts for me at, hey Peggy, at like 5 in the morning. And it's now 7:30 p.m. And we're going. The life of a journalist is kind of a little bit of the topic tonight. So it's been an unusual career. And even working from home for the New York Times for 5 or 6 years when we were in New Jersey yielded some unique experiences, one of which I'm going to read about tonight. We are rainbowed up here in advance of Pride Month. Hi, Lizzie, my daughter. And so the Pride flag went up out front. It's gargantuan. It's very hard to miss our house now. And with that came like a lot of yard work after work. So yeah, my hair's still wet. I'm a mess. But that's okay. That's what we do here. So the first one that I'm going to read tonight, because I'm going to read these in chronological order for a change. I didn't write this one. And there's a reason for that. I got sent out on an assignment by a guy named Mitchell L. Blumenthal. Yeah, I'm going to drop that name. Mitchell L. Blumenthal. This man is editor for the New York Times, for the New Jersey section. And he had the unique distinction of being able to drop the F-bomb as every part of speech and all of the punctuation to a sentence. All of it. There was not a sentence where he couldn't find a way to work it in like bare bones minimum 3 times in one sentence. And on this particular occasion, he sent me out, and I was terrified of this man, absolutely terrified. I was a cub reporter. He scared me to death. And because he swore and I didn't swear, that was for one thing. But also he was just intimidating. And so I could not say no to this guy. I mean, he could send me out to tame a lion or catch an alligator, and I would have been like, yes, sir, I'm going to go tame a tiger gator. Yes, yep, sure, I could do that. Yep, I know how to, no problem. So he sent me out because there was a woman who was found unconscious from an overdose with a note, and he wanted me to go get a story on her. The only problem was that she was in the hospital. I was not next of kin. I was a reporter. They weren't letting reporters in. We all knew that. And P.S., she's in a coma. And she had no ID on her. And he sent me to go get the story. And he said, if you can't get this story, don't ever expect to get another assignment for the New York Times. So I left the kids with my mother. She drove to my house, and I went to get the story. Now, at some point, my boss called, and my mom and I have the same phone voice, like you do. And he called, and he started peppering his sentences like, Lisa Suhay, da 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 da, F-bomb, comma, F-bomb, yes, F-bomb, no. And my mother listened very patiently through the entire thing, waited till he had F-bombed himself on out, and said, this is her mother, and as soon as she gets in, I'll be sure and tell her that you called. Which terrified him to the core for some reason. It was fantastic. But I didn't know this was going on because there's no such thing as cell phones in my life at that point. And the only thing I could figure out to do when I got there was to volunteer to read to her. I showed up. I talked to them. They said no reporters were allowed in. And I said, well, I'm also an author. I'm a brand new author. I have these books, and I hear they read to people in comas, so can I read to her? And I'm thinking, I'm gonna talk to the nurses. They'll tell me something. I'll get something, anything. At least I'll be able to. My thinking was, if I'm in the room with her, at least I can describe the room. I can't come back empty-handed. There's no way, you know? So they let me go in and they let me read to her. And here's what happened. And I wasn't allowed to write the story because by the time I left the hospital room, I was part of the story. That was not good. Mystery surrounds a woman found unconscious on drugs by Andy Newman for the New York Times, July 17th, 2000. After nearly 3 weeks, an unidentified woman who was found nearly comatose in a motel near Atlantic City has begun offering small clues as to who she is, communicating in nods from her hospital bed since Friday, but the police say they remain baffled by her story or lack of one. On June 28th, the authorities have said the woman, who is black, about 50 years old, and weighs about 250 pounds, checked into the Days Inn, a motel along United States Route 30 in Galloway Township, about 15 miles from Atlantic City. She gave the name Maxine Hall. When she did not check out the next day, the manager entered her room and found her unconscious from an overdose of prescription drugs of a class that includes the tranquilizers Valium and Xanax, the Galloway police said. The woman left no confirmation of her identity, and the labels of all the prescription bottles had been taken off, the police said. The police found a key to a post office box in Denver that had not proven to fit any box, a schedule for a bus that runs from New York City to Cape May, 40 miles farther down the Garden State Parkway, and pamphlets advertising weight loss methods. Lieutenant Frank Johnson of the Galloway police said. The Denver police said that they knew no one named Maxine Hall, nor did anyone with that name or fitting her description show up in any database in New Jersey or Denver, said Police Detective Jean Gogili. Her fingerprints have yielded no clues. The woman did not appear to be homeless, the police said. She was well dressed, her suitcase neatly packed. Shortly after arriving in Atlantic City Mainland Hospital in Galloway, the woman fell into a coma. But on Thursday, she opened her eyes and appeared to respond, albeit incoherently, a hospital official said. On Friday, a non-staff correspondent for the New York Times, Lisa Suhay, went to the hospital to try to learn more about the woman. When Miss Suhay read a book of fables to the woman, she appeared to respond to the stories coming out of her coma. Miss Suhay began asking questions to which the woman responded by nodding or shaking her head. The woman indicated that Maxine Hall was not her real name, but she did live in Denver, though not recently. Asked if she had tried to contact relatives in New Jersey and had a bad experience, the woman began to weep. The next day, the woman was transferred to Atlantic City Hospital in Atlantic City, where she remains in serious condition. When the police tried to talk to her there, however, they got nowhere. They said that they believed she did not trust them. Therefore, Lieutenant Johnson has asked Miss Suhay to accompany him to the hospital tomorrow to talk to the woman again. Yup. I was reading to her. I was reading the fable, The Stone Carrier. And instead of staying in her coma, she started to cry. She came out of it. And the reason she was just nodding was because she still had tubes and stuff. And when I called my boss, Mr. Blumenthal, to tell him that I had a story and told him what happened, he said, Jesus Christ, Suhay, what the, all of the F-bombs you could possibly ever think of in every possible form of speech and punctuation, were you trying to, what were you thinking of? She was supposed to stay in the coma. You're not supposed to be the story. What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? You screwed up. And I said, yeah, I'm so sorry. And I was in tears. And then he said, well, you're relieved for a week. You're off writing for a week until you learn how to do this, right? So it got worse and worse and worse because the story got out And all of a sudden, CNN, and television stations, and Vanity Fair magazine was beating down my phone, and I almost got fired from the little work that I had for the New York Times at the time, because I woke a woman up from a coma. Because why? Because that's the power of storytelling. Yay. And then this happened. This was 2000, no, November 2001. I was writing for the Times some more. And I don't know if y'all remember this, but there was a little problem with anthrax getting sent in the mail right around that time. So I lived between the two post offices, smack in the middle of the two post offices that kept getting the letters with the anthrax. I had just had Avery, and I was still nursing, and same boss sent me to the post offices to do interviews, to do the stories, and I did them. And then I did this op-ed because I needed a little comic relief, and I thought we all did. So it's a timeout for Bioterrorists, New York Times, November 11th, 2001. On The Daily Show on Comedy Central, Jon Stewart, a New Jersey native, has a new segment titled America Freaks Out. And I am here to tell you that New Jersey, particularly South Jersey, is setting the gold standard. We are freaking out with a vengeance. Here's why. These bioterrorists have struck at the wrong people. They have unwittingly hit the stress belt of America, women who work from home or are otherwise tied to the world of children and chores, and for whom the mail is one of the few things in life that they have to look forward to in a day. They have messed with us mommies. When we freak out, we do it in a very big way. And when we're done, we start looking for someone to give a great big time out. It has long been a source of neighborhood mirth that the mail truck comes, and within moments, every door on the block opens and all the stay-at-home moms casually sprint across their lawns for some contact with the world of grown-ups. The mail! Source of letters, circulars, anything to remind us that there is life out there that does not want us to give it juice boxes, ice pops, or $5. Then the anthrax scare hit Trenton, and we started seeing our letter carrier wearing rubber gloves. Sound familiar? When handing over large envelopes and packages, the poor woman looks as if she's delivering us a lightly grilled weasel. Now, the mail truck comes, and our streets are as barren as those at high noon when a gun battle is expected. Tumbleweed waft past the boxes as we take time to don the proper protective gear. Now the Trenton Postal Facility, an hour north of us, and the Belmar facility south of us, which handles our mail, have been converged on by people in biohazard moon suits. And we have begun to freak out. We are in the crosshairs. True, the freak out is not confined to mommies. A friend in Trenton whose husband is a firefighter on the hazmat team called to tell me that her spouse would be home late again because he was dispatched to a house where a man found a powdered substance on his kitchen counter and in his refrigerator. It was grated cheese, she told me later. The man forgot that he had grated it earlier in the day. Yep, yeah, we're calm down here in South Jersey. We can't tell anthrax from Parmesan. Great. But other than that, we're fine. Halloween was a morass of urban legends, speculation, and street corner mommy strategic sessions. While men were out there fretting over pasta garnish, mothers were holding bus stop caucuses on how to handle Halloween. There were numerous online visits to check on the validity of tales that candy might be tainted and the malls might be targets. I say this as I hold my Gulf War issued Israeli gas mask that up until last week had a place in our home only as a souvenir of the days when Mommy was covering the Middle East from Israel and Saudi Arabia. Now the mask is something I'm starting to consider for wearing daily and wondering how I might pass it off as a fashion accessory. Maybe nobody will notice if I just wear it quickly to retrieve the mail. Perhaps a scarf will set it off. So I don my yellow rubber gloves, check on the bottle of hand sanitizer, and wait for the letter carrier who is wearing a similar getup to deliver mail I no longer wish to open. One thing is certain, the building angst is galvanizing suburban mothers, a force to be reckoned with in any state. Now the morning caucus has invective. We are tapping our feet and we are counting to 10. Remember, we are the ones who manage playgroups, surly pre-teenagers, soccer dads, homework, and bill paying, and lift buses off of our young. We know Parmesan from Romano. My fellow moms and I are ready to unleash the ultimate against bioterrorists as soon as we can schedule them in, that is. That's just about enough. Don't make us come down there. Now, I thought that was kind of a cute column. Unfortunately, some bioterrorists, or people who wanted to be bioterrorists, did not take kindly to being told that mommies might put them in timeout. So within a few days of that column appearing, someone sent me a package containing white powder. And because I was a New York Times reporter, and because the lady who delivered our mail said, I don't think I'd open that, we had the FBI, the CIA, the police, bomb-sniffing, drug-sniffing dogs, you name it, all the cop equipment. It was at our house, and we had the FBI sitting on our lawn for a week. Turned out that the powder was not toxic, but it did have a threatening note. So yeah, waking people from comas, taking off the crazies. Just another day. This is where things start to normalize, is my author life, because the journalist life is just too nuts. So the final story is a storybook ending, which is, of course, it's the last one because it's a storybook ending. That's the headline. July 7th, 2002. I found a cure for the acquisitive, suburban, mansion-coveting, minivan driving, don't have enough stuff, gluttony blahs. For quite a while, I'd been bemoaning the size of our little log house in the pines and the fact that our boys share a room. I had gone for a drive through a new development where friends will soon live in a large house with a pool and lakefront property. I envisioned my sons going there to play and then coming home and asking why we couldn't have those things. I could see them begging to go and live with their friends in a real house. So I was looking for the cure to these woes, and little did I know that I'd have to get up at 5 a.m. and drive for 2 hours in lethal traffic to find it. But now that I have, I feel that I need to share. This cure has a name. It's called the Lafayette Street School in Newark. A third grade teacher there, Judy Riccio, had written to me and asked if I would be willing to donate a morning to read to children and talk about being a writer. She told me that theirs was not only the oldest elementary school building in the state that is still in use, a dubious honor, but one that hasn't had an author visit there ever. I thought she meant this year, but she meant ever. It isn't just that Lafayette Street School is now part of a district run by the state and cannot afford the fees most authors charge. I know plenty of writers and performers who donate their time, but it seems most people shrink from the neighborhood and the whole city, really. Being born and bred in Manhattan, having toured schools in Trenton, Pennsauken, and Camden earlier in the year, I wasn't worried about Newark. I did have a few nervous moments finding my way when I realized that, as in Camden, residents in Newark have a passion for taking down street signs. Arriving on Lafayette Street, I learned that new parking rules made it permit-only parking for residents only. This leaves teachers and other school visitors in a bind because most are not from the area. The options: park blocks away, or park on the playground. Yes, children at the Lafayette Street School share their playground with cars and 2 dumpsters, and not one single scrap of playground equipment, not even a basketball hoop. I watched the kindergarten through 3rd grade play out there in the asphalt car lot jungle with a few kickballs and jump ropes and a lot of imagination. I thought of my 1st and 2nd grade sons who, at that moment, were at their school on the jungle gyms and swings with enough equipment to choke several horses. Contrast makes a powerful curative, and my mansionless state became a non-issue as that day wore on. Inside, the school was clean, neat, and as well tended as it's possible for it to be for a state-run school with hundreds of kids and teachers making up for a lack of wealth with determination and pride. You know, these teachers are good because they're not screaming. They don't need to. They have actually connected with students in a way that makes them feel as though they are partners in their education and the school is their community. This school also has a special distinction. On September 11th, students on the 4th floor stopped in mid-lessons when they saw an airplane slam into the World Trade Center. The classrooms on the 4th floor facing Manhattan were quickly packed with students and teachers who watched as the second plane hit and the towers fell. The children were so upset that from the oldest to the very youngest, they were begging teachers to let them go to New York to help, Ms. Riccio said. These children were so awed and happy to meet someone from outside Newark, an author, no less, no matter how unknown. You would have thought that J.K. Rowling had popped in for tea and story time. A little girl named Genesis snapped my heartstrings when she handed me a little note apologizing for not being able to afford one of my books. I gave her and all the other children their own copies and watched Christmas come early. The school's library is extremely book challenged. You could hear a pin drop as I read to them. It was like seeing starving children have their plates loaded. I was there to tell them how storytelling and words are powerful tools. I wanted them to know that it doesn't matter where or who you come from. If you know how to use words, you can change things. Now I'd like to put my words where my mouth is and try and make a little change. If you're a writer, artist, or performer in New Jersey, and you want to spend a few hours doing something that will make you feel very wealthy and wonderful, please volunteer next year to visit the Lafayette Street School or any inner city school in the state. It's worth the risk, and the only thing you're guaranteed to lose is your heart. That's why all my school visits are always free. I know. I am never going to live in the mansion. It ain't happening because I give away the books and I do the school visits for free. But, man, you really can't beat the wealth that you accrue when you help people. And yeah, occasionally a story can wake a coma patient, so there's that. Thank you for being with me at the end of what has to be the longest Wednesday in, like, I don't know, hump day history for me anyway. I love you guys. And there just seems to be a boundless supply of the New York Times columns from my soapbox collection. So I will see you all tomorrow night.